Hello, Flat Earth researchers, debaters and debunkers. In a few moments we'll have a look at part of this video recently put out by Globe Earth proponent Wolfie 6020. It's an excellent example of the superiority bias that Wolfie often employs when talking to or of those of us who realize that we do not live on a spinning globe Earth. Of course, we're often referred to as flat earthers for want of a better word, but of course, with that term comes the assumption that flat earthers are somehow stupid or do not have the cognitive ability to believe in this perception or model that we are given and that is passed off as reality. So this is where the superiority complex comes in with those who wish to push the globe Earth belief and refuse to acknowledge what we have realized, and that is that perspective is the imaginary curve, and that the globe Earth is nothing more than a concept that has been passed off as some kind of scientific fact, when in fact it is nothing more than a belief in a concept, a very dogmatic belief, because actually what anyone with any real intelligence and the real ability to detach from any bias will come to realize is that any number of models are possible when it comes to illustrating the passage of time as is told by the big clock in the sky. So at this point it's worth pointing out that the only reason that the globe exists in our minds is not because it was ever discovered as a scientific fact, but merely because the heliocentric model was introduced along with the Gregorian calendar, which is a solar calendar. So the sun was put at the center of this model, and any model that illustrates the movement of the sun, moon and other luminaries is nothing more than an illustration of the passage of time. That is all it is, and it can be illustrated in many different ways. You can assume that any one of these things we see in the sky is at the center, or the Earth is at the center, because that's all anyone ever does, is tell the time with these models. So this is why we have this display of superiority bias when it comes to someone who believes dogmatically that they live on a globe. And we'll see also evidence of this dogmatic belief when we look at some photographs taken by Wolfie from high altitude in an aircraft looking through a heads-up display, and we'll compare that with the Walter Bislin's curvature calculator. But first, let's just go and have a look at what I mean by the cognitive bias that we will see in the video that we'll play in a second. Here on Wiki we've got illusory superiority, and in the field of social psychology, illusory superiority is a condition of cognitive bias wherein a person overestimates their own qualities and abilities in relation to the same qualities and abilities of other people. Okay, so this is quite important because obviously, as we've already said, nobody has a problem in believing that we live on a globe. This is a perception that has been put into our heads since we were kids. So it doesn't matter how smart or stupid or intelligent one might be, to perceive and believe that we live on a globe is nothing special. But to believe and perceive it only in that way and not be able to perceive it in any other way really is a dogmatic cult-like belief. It's quite interesting here because it goes on to make a very apt point again. So let's carry on. Illusory superiority is one of many positive illusions relating to the self that are evident in the study of intelligence, the effective performance of tasks and tests, and the possession of desirable personal characteristics and personality traits. I'll just read this extra sentence here and take you on. The term illusory superiority was first used by the researchers Van Ypren and Boek in 1991. The condition is also known as the above average effect, the superiority bias, the leniency error, the sense of relative superiority, the primus inter pares effect, and the Lake Woebegone effect. This is quite funny and apt, as we'll see here, when it comes to the fictional globe belief, because Lake Woebegone is a fictional town created by Garrison Keillor as the setting of the News from Lake Woebegone segment of the radio program A Prairie Home Companion. Lake Woebegone is also the setting of many of Keillor's stories and novels. It is described as a small rural town in central Minnesota and is peopled with fictional characters and places, many of which became familiar to listeners of the broadcast. The events and adventures of the townspeople provided Keillor with a wealth of humorous and often touching stories. And it goes on to say that Keillor has said that people often ask him if it is a real town, and when he replied that it was not, they seemed disappointed, because people want stories to be true. And that's exactly what we have here. We have stories and explanations to go with this globe earth belief. And of course they would love to have us all believe that this is the truth, that we live on a spinning globe earth. And it's also believed that we are smart if we can believe or perceive this, and we are not smart if we dare to question it and realize that the geometry of perspective has been converted into this imaginary spherical earth, which of course can only ever be represented by this plastic ball here, because no one has ever seen the earth from this point of view. So let's hear from Wolfie himself and his cognitive bias here, when he talks about a fundamental aspect of the globe earth concept.
So I can't believe I actually have to do this demonstration, but apparently some flat earthers are still failing at the basic level of understanding how the globe works with respect to up and down.
Now, you can see that he's already started off by saying that flat earthers fail at understanding this concept. No, nobody fails to understand what up and down is on the globe. In fact, we'll see that you have to employ cognitive dissonance to believe in this globe with poles at the so-called top and bottom, while also holding the belief or concept that there is no up and down on a globe, when in fact on any globe there is an up and down dictated by the north and south poles. So it's not a failing. Nobody has a problem understanding this concept, but the problem is that Wolfie here believes that some people can't understand this very simple concept.
Here we have a globe. Here we have a small piece of paper with an arrow indicating the direction of down and the direction of up, with a stick figure person beside. On a globe, down is always towards the center of the globe. So when we put this person on the globe and we move him to different locations, down is always towards the center of the globe.
Okay, again, this is not a concept that anyone has any difficulty with. Of course, if you are to perceive or imagine yourself on a globe, then down is of course towards the center of that globe. Likewise, if you draw a circle on a piece of paper, then down is always going to be towards the center of that globe. But the challenge here is not to understand the concept, but proof of concept. Where is the measurable, physical, demonstrable, scientific proof of this concept? It is nowhere to be seen. So it's all very well putting a stick man on the outside of a sphere and showing an arrow pointing towards the center of that sphere and saying that is down. The challenge is to prove that if you go from, say, somewhere up north to the equator or Australia, do you physically become perpendicular or even upside down compared to or in relation to the person that was up north? That is what has never ever been proven or measured. The concept is very well understood, but where is the science? That's the difference.
If we put somebody in Australia, down is still towards the center of the globe. So this person is not upside down because his head is always in the direction of up. It's fairly straightforward.
Yeah, it is very straightforward, and so this isn't a concept that's difficult to understand. Okay, so we can see the cognitive bias being displayed here, where Wolfie assumes that those of us who question or demand the physical proof of this concept are stupid. It's not because we cannot perceive it, it's because we can perceive it, and we can also perceive it in many other ways. We can perceive how any model can be created, and we can also see that those of you who believe this as your absolute truth must have faith in things like curvature or a magical force that would have you stick to the outside of a spherical Earth. Now, I've asked Wolfie before to prove this curvature in various other simple experiments, and of course it's never been done. I've tried myself to prove there is curvature by measuring the alleged curvature from points along the equator or near the equator up north. There is no change in the direction of down, and again it's a matter of perception rather than a physical reality. And again, the globe Earth proponent has to change the meaning of the word level. We of course know that level is usually something that's horizontal to a point of origin, but with the globe Earth belief they suddenly jump to what they refer to as level in their model, which is perpendicular to down. So until you ever establish first principles and refer to either physical reality or a model, then you're always going to go round and round in circles with these spinning globe Earth believers, aren't you? They will never ever settle on any first principle, or they will never agree that in our observable, physical, demonstrable, measurable reality there is no curve. So we'll leave it at that. You can obviously go and watch this yourself if you like, but if we have a look at some of these comments down here as well, we'll see the kind of insults you get and the same kind of cognitive bias that you get from these globe occultists. You lost them at here we have a globe. I can't believe you have to teach this stuff to adults in 2020. Excellent demonstration of how a small child has more intelligence than a flat earth believer. No, we are not believers, because we realize that the globe earth is a belief. Alright, that's it goes on and on and on. lots of praise for Wolfie showing us this concept. Okay, do Flirfs really not get this? Amazing. How do they define down? What are they using as a reference? Their stupid baffles me. Okay, again, it's funny, isn't it, really, because what goes on in the flat earther's head is the realization that you can interpret things, and we've been given this concept to believe in. Let's just see what Wolfie has to say there. When I see a flat earther making this claim, I ask him if he thinks south is down. In the majority of cases, they never answer and just disappear. Okay, well, again, you know, north and south, east, west, these are all things that can work. They work fine on any kind of flat earth model if you want to do that. So again, it all comes down to what you can prove. Where is the scientific proof of this concept? There is no measurable proof. And let's go and have a look at how this cognitive dissonance comes into play, and how lies have to be told, obfuscation has to be made when it comes to actually showing us that we do in fact live on a level Earth, whereas you have to lie to uphold this belief in a globe. So of course, when it comes to the geometry of a sphere, you would have to believe that the moment you rise up above the surface, when you're looking straight ahead at eye level, then the surface will drop away from your eye level. Now, Wolfie has this photograph here taken through a heads-up display, and he refers to the line on this heads-up display as eye level, and therefore is able to say or make the claim that, you see, eye level has risen above the horizon, we therefore live on a globe. But all this is just a display that, okay, might use spherical geometry, and in of itself can mathematically prove itself. But of course, what's happened here is real, true eye level in the center of the field of view has been ignored, and this line on the heads-up display has moved up, because what this line represents is the aircraft's level in relation to the direction that its nose is pointing, as represented here. So this all has to fit into this display, and with the heads-up display, it knows that the aircraft is at high altitude now, 46,000 feet. So what has actually happened in this display is that this horizon line has come up to the top part of the display, because the aircraft is almost at its ceiling of about 50,000 feet. So we can see, if you just look at the display with the 5 degrees positive pitch here and the 5 degrees negative pitch here, in relation to this horizontal line on the heads-up display, it is in the middle. And of course the pitch indicator has gone up by a couple of degrees, so this all has to be relative to itself. It's not relative to the horizon that we see at eye level. I'll just show you what that means here. Here's the photograph, and in GIMP here I've just drawn a line where the eye level actually is, assuming that the camera was more or less held horizontally and pointing straight out, straight ahead. Obviously it's going to be difficult to do that with any fine degree of accuracy. What we have is the center of the field of view here, eye level for the camera, or for the observer looking through the camera, here, this red line here, which is more in line with the horizon that we can see in front of us than this horizon line here. Okay, so if you go and watch videos of the horizontal line, the horizon line on a heads-up display, you will see that this line moves up and down along this scale. It doesn't always stick to the horizon. It's not supposed to, okay, because okay, mathematically it is representing geometry, and which governs perspective, as well as a spherical model Earth. So let's go back and have a look at that on the Walter Bislin's calculator, and we'll see exactly the same thing happening here on this calculator as we see with the heads-up display. What we have here is okay, let's bring this down first. Okay, that adjusts the eye level, but this is just erroneous in the first place. Oops. Let's just go and have a look at what the assumption is. So here again we have this model based on a perception, or the geometry of a sphere assumed to be the globe Earth. So we have eye level going straight out here, horizontal, and we have a surface that is curving down away from us. We have this bulge, and excuse me, we have this horizon at a certain point, dictated by our height above the surface. Now, as far as geometry goes, these tangent lines and the angles that you can produce are mathematical proofs. They will work on the model. If you rise up this eye level point from a certain point above the surface on this model, and you measure these angles and the distances to the surface from there of these tangent lines, then you will get these proofs that can be very accurately illustrated when you use geometry. But here we have this assumed side-on view, which we've never had. We can never ever measure any curvature on the horizontal, converted into this curvature calculator here, which doesn't relate to real life observations whatsoever. Here we have this pink line showing eye level, and we have the surface not even coming up to eye level. So when we adjust the observer height, rather than the whole thing rising up and maintaining true eye level, we have this eye level line which goes up and leaves a gap between eye level and the surface. So this does not truly represent observations carried out on or above the Earth. But as I said, because it's a mathematical model, it works in of itself. So you can get these numbers here that represent the distance of between eye level and the surface, but it simply does not fit our reality. But that is how the heads-up display works. As the aircraft gains altitude, the heads-up display will automatically bring up the horizontal line on the heads-up display and create this gap between itself and the visible horizon, regardless of where the horizon actually is in the eyes of the observer. Okay, so Wolfie has in fact proven here that when we look across the flat Earth, we do in fact see the horizon at eye level. And he's also proven that you have to lie and employ cognitive dissonance to then claim that eye level is up here when it's not in the center of your field of view when you're looking straight ahead. And it simply shows that this model of a globe does not fit with real life observations. So again, there is no difficulty, Wolfie, in understanding the concept. The difficulty comes when you try to prove the concept, because there is no proof of concept. And that's how those of us who have been able to put aside our cognitive bias realise that we aren't on a spinning globe, and we realise that people like you have to make all sorts of false accusations and dream up proofs in order to cling on to your globe Earth belief. Thank you very much.